And just that quickly, we are live with Robert Peterson, and you can take a look. There is his book, The Entrepreneur Mindset Shift. And welcome, Robert, to Amazon Live.
Well, thanks, Scott. Appreciate the opportunity.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We have had some pretty good conversations come up to this point, and in fact, I was a guest on your podcast. And was able to, that episode just dropped this week.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
We did have fun. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the folks and tell them where you are, what's going on, and where to find that podcast for.
All right. So I'm Robert Peterson. I'm an international speaker, entrepreneur coach, author, and podcast host. And I host a podcast called Add Value, the number 2 entrepreneurs. So we add value to entrepreneurs by sharing the entrepreneurial journey and helping entrepreneurs to really control the thoughts in their mind, right? Tackle that imposter voice in their head and take control of it and use it for their own good rather than having it hold them back.
That is that mindset has just been a big issue recently. I think there's a lot more, there's more podcasts on it. There's more blog posts on it. There's more books coming out about it. And here's your book, which is really part of that, the mindset shift. And in your book, you start out with a little bit of your background, how you had a dream job that became the nightmare. So give us a little bit of your history and what led, and I'll give it away a little bit. What led a missionary to be writing a business book?
Yeah, so I spent, as you mentioned, 20 years in Christian ministry, and 10 of that was as a missionary in Bogota, Colombia, after I'd served in the Marine Corps. And so when I got into Christian ministry, being a missionary seemed pretty natural, having already been in 9 different countries. And so my wife and I chose, Bogota, Colombia to work, partly because we felt like nobody else would choose that. And that kind of seems to be one of the defining traits of the little rebel in me. I'm not a big rebel. I'm a little rebel. And just, picking things that, it seems like most people wouldn't do that. And so worked as a missionary, mostly training Colombian pastors, coaching Colombian pastors on the business side of running a church. They're really good at preaching and teaching, and they just needed support on developing the business systems. And so that was my primary role there. And then for 10 years, I was an outreach pastor in Colorado at a Christian church, helping to reorganize their support of their missionaries that they gave money to around the globe. And so one of the first things I was doing there was creating relationships. Right? It was built around a transactional model. The church wrote the missionaries checks. The missionaries sent newsletters. And I very much wanted to change that to a relational model, because the tendency in a transaction is if something goes wrong, the checks stop.
Right.
So of course, a missionary is not going to tell you if something's going wrong, because they don't want the checks to stop. They're kind of dependent on those. But if you have a relationship, then they can tell you, hey, we're having some issues in our marriage, or we're having some issues with this ministry thing, and we need some help. And so they can turn to the church for help rather than fear that the church is going to cut them off.
Yeah, it was Boy, there's so many different things. Thinking about a Marine becoming a missionary. So there's a book in itself.
At least one.
Just the adventures in Colombia. Because I think a lot of people have visions of just drug cartels everywhere. And that may or may not be true, but just kind of saying what the vision might be. And then working with pastors and missionaries, we do, as a culture, put a lot of burden on those kinds of servants. And in a world where there's so much written, I mean, Joseph Pine came out with his book a number of years ago on authenticity, and in kind of a way kicked off a firestorm of books and blogs about being authentic and how important it is. And yet I don't really want my pastor to be authentic. I don't want him to have or her to have problems, to have marital issues or difficulties with their children or any addictions. So where do we go?
I think one of the challenges is we love our pastors to have had those problems. And so as long as he's solved those problems, then it's okay to tell the story. Right. But if he's in the middle of those problems, then we're concerned. And typically they lose their jobs because they're not qualified to be in leadership. And it's a very challenging position for the church to be in, to have somebody that's struggling with the same human issues that everyone else in the congregation struggles with, but feeling like they've got to put on airs, right? They've got to put on, they've got to look the best. They've got to have it all together. And I think, that translates into entrepreneurs a lot of times. They feel like, man, especially like an entrepreneur coach, right? A business coach or a CEO, well, everyone expects me to have it all together, and I've got to look like I've got all the answers and I know everything. And I think in a lot of ways that's starting to go away. There's a respect for authenticity. There's a respect for people going through the mess and leaning into the mess. And the truth is, life is a mess. Running a business is a mess. And when you put the mess out there, not to ask for sympathy but just to tell people, man, this is just the reality of it. And I think that's been one of the really cool things about the podcast, is being able to share people's journeys and stories and have other people listening going, oh, that's the same thing I had going on, whether it's the thoughts they're thinking or the bad decisions they made or just the procrastination they're fighting against.
It's interesting because when you're in business, you don't want to be the only one, but sometimes knowing that you're not the only one doesn't always help.
There's some true. What I was just having a conversation previously where teenagers always feel like the problems that they're feeling, right? The way they feel about growing up or about this transition into maturity. And they're convinced that they're the only one that's ever had that thought, that idea, that feeling. And I think some of that translates into adulthood. We convinced, our brain just somehow says, that little voice, maybe it's just the little voice. It's not the brain. The little voice just says, you're the only one. You're the only idiot thinking that. And so don't talk to anybody else about it because no one's going to understand. You better keep that to yourself. And I guess it's a little like sin, right? We feel like, if we made a mistake and we've done something that we know is wrong, that little voice tells us, oh, you better not tell anybody because they're going to judge you and they're going to hold that against you. And you're better off just hiding it. And we have this tendency to want to, pull the sheet up over it.
In Treasure Island, that great book of philosophy by Robert Louis Stevenson, right? There's a line in there where he's the character is lamenting because he says, we're not afraid to sin, and yet we're afraid to ask for forgiveness, right? And I think the same thing happens in business is that we're willing to just go headlong in and make the biggest blunders that could put our business and families at risk. And yet we're not willing to maybe invest in a coach like yourself. And if you will, kind of go, maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I know my part of the business, but maybe I don't know how to run the business. Maybe I know how to deliver sermons, but I don't know how to manage the finances of a church.
Well, and we see that in a lot of areas. I think like the legal field, lawyers, dentists are really known for this, and they're really good at being a dentist, or they're really good at being a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
But being really good as a lawyer, being really good as a dentist doesn't necessarily translate into having a clue how to run an office as a business. And
Yeah.
and because they're at such a level and they've paid for such a high level of education, for them to say, I need some help with this,
Mm-hmm.
is very challenging. And so it is that is a very real situation, not just for lawyers and dentists. They're just the most extreme example. But for a lot of business owners, they feel like I've got to be the expert. And somehow we convince ourselves that I've got to be the expert in every area rather than being the expert in my area and my specialty, and finding ways to outsource, hire VAs, hire for your weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can grow your business because you can focus on the stuff you really love to do or that you're really freaking good at.
There was a, I think it was in the 80s, there was a program out of Canada called the New Red Green Show. And so for the guys that remember, they had Possum Lodge, and within Possum Lodge, there was Men's Anonymous. And so the one guy was get up there, and he's, hi, I'm Scott, I'm a man, and hi, Scott. And he said, I was trying to put together this barbecue. And so I had the parts spread all across the patio, and it just wasn't coming together. And my wife came out and said, why don't you just read the instructions? And then I thought about it, and I thought, that's not like asking for help. That's like cheating. So if you run a business and you think, I don't want to ask for help, tell you what, why don't you just cheat and hire somebody like Robert?
That's fantastic.
To give you some advice. That's an unfair advantage. And in business, we need that. We need an unfair advantage.
It really is. And the crazy thing is, one of the great coach examples, and so somebody would say, but Robert doesn't assemble barbecues, right? How can he help coach me through assembling barbecues? But, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback, arguably greatest quarterback in history of football.
Yeah.
And he has a quarterback coach. Do you know how many
yes.
his quarterback coach has won?
Who probably couldn't throw the ball 20 yards.
Right. Yeah. And so you don't have to be a Super Bowl quarterback to coach a Super Bowl quarterback.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea is that a coach comes alongside, and a coach can see outside of the box that you're sitting in and can help you see things a little bit differently and get a different viewpoint. And that's the real power in effective coaching, I think, is coming alongside someone and helping them grasp the things that are inside of them, right? Those instructions, they know how to put that grill together. They're inside of you. And so you need a good coach to ask the right questions that'll pull out that knowledge and that wisdom to put your business, in the place where you really want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to get that different perspective, right? There was I'm fascinated by the Olympics, 1968 Olympic, Mexico Olympics, Summer Olympics. And Bob Beeman breaks the world record in long jump by, I don't know, over a foot, right? I mean, it was some unbelievable. He jumped further than they could measure. They had to go get a different tape. And, but if you look at the story, he grew up in New York, a black man in the United States in the 60s, gets a scholarship, goes to college in Texas, is going to run. They were scheduled for a meet against a school that was, and I won't name, but was known for prejudice against black people. And he refused to compete in that meet. So he lost his scholarship and he lost his coach right before he goes into the 68 Olympics, where he set the record, by the way, is the end of the story. But what happened was the silver medalist from the Olympics before, from the 60 Olympics and the 64 Olympics, he came in and was competing with Bob Beeman, but he decided, because my friend lost his coach, I will help coach him.
Hmm.
Bob Beeman had 3 attempts to get in, to qualify to get into the finals, scratched on the first 2, but his coach came in and gave him the advice that he needed. So he made a jump that qualified, and then he was able to set that world record. And so your coaches can come from unusual places, and but you need them. Bob Beeman would never have broken that record if he didn't have a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. There's superpower in coaches, and I assume most business executives, most especially when you get at 6-7 figures, they've got multiple coaches, right? You've got a coach in marketing, they've got a coach in scaling, they've got a coach in mindset, and working with multiple coaches to to improve different areas and focus on different areas.
And that really gets into the second chapter of your book. So we're going pretty good here. I'm just going to remind everybody, Robert Peterson, we are live on Amazon, and I'm going to put the book up so everyone can see it. The Entrepreneur Mindset Shift. It's available. We've got to highlight it in the carousel. And so buy it for yourself, buy it for somebody that could benefit from this. In chapter 2, Robert, you talk about own your own stuff. I'll say you're on Amazon, own your own stuff, take responsibility. And that's really what we're talking about here. I mean, we said you've got to have the right mind shift. You need to be willing to say, I need help, but it's still your responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody's going to save your business. Bottom line, nobody's going to swoop in. There's no Robin Hood. They're not coming to help you or your business. In fact, outside of you and your family, nobody probably cares. To be honest, let's be honest. And so until you care more about your business than anybody else cares about it, and that's really what taking responsibility, is all about. You've got to own it, and you've got to say, the buck stops with me. The best entrepreneurs are the ones that have said, the buck stops with me. I'm responsible for everything that happens to me. I'm not responsible for everything that's happening in my business. It's not the world. It's not God. It's not karma. It's not Amazon, outselling me. It's
Right.
It's my responsibility. And what am I going to do about it?
We've seen that a lot too as we've just gone through these last 2 years with COVID, and a lot of comments on social media. I saw social media in a way distills down thought into a certain essence. And I saw 3 distinct tracks, and one of them was the people who were blaming everybody. There was someone to blame. It was the government did too much or not enough, or business this or that or whatever. And then there were the people that just looked at this as a big vacation. And should I buy Disney Plus? What's the next thing that I need to? What's the next thing that I can stream on Amazon Video? But the third one was really the people who I will say took that responsibility and said, "What are the opportunities that weren't available to me before the lockdown? And how do I address that? How do I find the problems that I can solve and solve them for people?"
Yeah, it's so good. There's so much good that's come from this. I mean, I don't think you and I would have met had this not happened, because the way conversations were taking place were so limited to location, so limited to geography. My entire business prior to COVID was built face-to-face handshaking. And now I have conversations with people in Australia and New Zealand and England and South America, and you and I are in 2 different states in the United States having this conversation. And so COVID has opened up so much opportunity. And I think there's some great opportunity for corporations that are willing to be creative and allow people to have hybrid schedules, allow employees to, focus on childcare while at the same time being more productive in their work, because they're not worried about having to rush off and pick up their kids and commute, and saving energy because we've got people that don't have to drive around anymore. I mean, there's there really are so many great things that have happened because of it. But there's a whole big percentage of our population that's still whining and crying and complaining rather than focusing on, man, what can we do? What do we have control of? Right? What do we have control over? And then let's focus on that and do something good with that instead of all the whining and crying about the stuff we can't change. We can't take it away. It doesn't matter who created it or where it came from or how it happened. It's here. It's real.
Mhm.
That's pretty much been confirmed, right? And so, you know, I can't stop it. I can't control it. What are the things I can control, and how can I make it better for me and my family and the people that I'm involved with? And that's an entrepreneurial focus. That you know, what
Mhm.
can you control, and what are you going to do about it? And then letting
And
go of all the stuff that you can't control,
I
because
love
that's where
that.
so many people get caught up.
Yeah, I love that because, and that really moves into the next thing that you talked about is that you're creative. We're creative, and we live in a universe of abundance,
Mm,
and that is
absolutely.
a huge a mindset that people need to, whether they live in a universe of scarcity or one of abundance. But you talk about the abundant.
Well, and just the idea that we're creative beings, I think somewhere along the way that in the Western world, only artists, singers, and dancers get labeled as creative, and then everybody else thinks, well, I can't write a poem, so I'm not creative. And
Mm,
yet, you know, you look in the room behind you, and you've got a guitar, you got a television, you got a recorder, you got a poster from Disney. All of those things were created
hmm
by humanity, by
right,
human beings that came up with these ideas in their head, right? And then made these ideas into reality.
right.
And even the desk and the chair, as boring as a desk and a chair are, somebody had to make them.
hmm
And you can look around every person, wherever they're sitting, whether it's inside of an incredible automobile, guess what? Designed and created by humanity, right? Or you're walking around your neighborhood looking at the houses and the buildings, or you're downtown looking at those incredible buildings. Everything around you that's not nature was created by humanity. And that's not to say that all of it's good or being used for good, but it does show that we have incredible creative power and we've done
hmm
incredible things. Airplanes are flying overhead carrying hundreds of thousands of people from one city to another. So we can visit anywhere in the world within 24 hours. That's incredible, right?
hmm
And so recognizing that inside of each of us is a creative being designed by our creator to do incredible, amazing things on this planet for the sake of other humans. And when we tap into that, that's what we can build our business out of. That's what you can pour into your business. And when your heart and your purpose and passion are aligned in what you're doing to serve others, you've found a sweet spot that's unmatchable, right? That's when working feels like fun, and fun feels like working, and you're serving
hmm
other people, and great things can come from that.
I've seen uh, I've seen two levels of competent execution, and one is technical, right? Technically, it's perfect, and then there's a level of elegant execution.
Hmm.
And the example that I just pull out for people that is easily understood is Microsoft and Apple.
Hmm.
Both of them do pretty much the same thing to a certain degree. We can look at that. And I will say that Bill Gates, technically perfect, but not elegant. Apple, on the other hand, is also technically competent, but it's a much more elegant design, a much more elegant execution. And we could see that whether you could be a tax accountant and be technical or elegant.
Absolutely. And those are beautiful, beautiful things. And I think when people tap into their creativity, right? I mean, even writing a blog, putting a post, making a meme on Facebook or social media, or of
hmm
course, writing a book is a creative endeavor.
hmm
And I think more and more people need to tap into that little creativeness within inside of us. And one of the big powers, and we'll probably hit it a little later, but is imagination. And I think
hmm
imagination is something that adults especially need to really just trust and dig into and enjoy the power of our imagination.
Yeah, there's two things that go with that. One of it is creativity, and there's an amount of academic research that's gone on around creativity. But one of the things where there's not a lot of research is around curiosity. And I
Mm,
think they go together.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think the biggest power I have as a coach
Hmm.
is curiosity. My ability to ask questions is
Hmm.
what really can activate somebody else's mind. And asking yourself questions is really powerful for activating your own mind
Hmm.
and having a curiosity. Man, I even think curiosity can help you with some of these mindset shifts, right? What if you ask yourself, what if it's easy?
And I want to explore that because uh, next in your book really is talking about a money mindset. And I think that, and I love, by the way, I love the way your book opens up. This is like, come on, you can talk all you want about serving people and the greater good or whatever, but look, we're in business to make money. And I had a professor in college, Dr. Thomas Bible, who was my economics professor, and he said, "I don't like money, but I do like what money can do."
Hmm, fair enough. I love money because I love what money can do.
Yeah, well, there you go, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it opens doors, right?
And it
It
is
provides food, shelter, health,
it is an
enjoyment.
incredibly powerful tool
Yeah.
that is so misunderstood by so many. And and for some reason in our culture, we've been taught to be afraid of it, to be afraid to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? There's entire communities and entire generations being ripped off by banks, by bankers, by mortgage companies, by others because they're charging them fees and they're charging them higher interest rates and they're charging it because nobody talks about it. And you're not supposed to talk to your neighbor about money. You're not supposed to talk about your spouse about money, and you're not supposed to tell them what fees you're paying. You're not supposed to talk to your coworkers about your salary. And I think it's all bull. We should be talking about money. Everybody should talk about money. You and I should be able to talk about, hey man, how much was that TV?
Hmm.
Oh man, I paid $200 more than that. And we learn from each other. We learn what a fair rate is. We learn what
Hmm.
a fair fee is. And when you find out somebody's not charging a fair fee, guess what? Those fees are going to go away because everybody's talking about it. And I think
Mm.
we've done entire generations a disservice with this idea of not talking about money or sex. And I think both of those things are really cool and amazing, but they
Hmm.
both require conversation.
Right. And I hadn't thought about that, Robert, is maybe we would not have such a gender and race gap in pay equity if we talked about that stuff and it wasn't hidden.
But see, they make it scary, right? You're
Hmm.
not supposed to talk about money. They make, in fact, at the higher levels, they make them sign contracts that you can't talk about your money. And so your coworker sitting right next to you, both of you doing the same exact job. And yeah, maybe one of them's better than the other. Maybe they've been there longer. There's 10-year thing, all those other things.
Right.
But they still should, out of fairness, they should be able to talk about, their money, and they talk about what they're getting paid.
Hmm.
I think about, Christ made a deal with these workers in a parable, right? He tells each of the workers come and he offers them the same pay, no
Hmm.
matter what time of the day they come into the project. And so, the guy that works 8 hours got the same pay as the guy that worked 2 hours, the guy that worked 1 hour. Now,
Hmm.
most of us, based on our economy, would say, wow, that's not fair. And you know what Jesus says to him?
Yeah.
You knew the deal because we talked
Right.
about it,
Yeah.
right? The next guy, same thing. You knew the deal because we talked about it. You agreed to this deal because we
Yeah.
talked about it.
Yeah.
And so all four people, he says, we talked about it. This was the deal, and you agreed
Hmm.
to it, and you went to work. And that, and but the biggest message to me is they all talked about it. They all agreed about it. He didn't try to pit one against the other and tell him, no, you can't tell. No, you can't tell. Or, hey, I'm going to make him pay me that same rate for 1 hour as I did for 8 hours.
Hmm.
Right. No, they just talked about it. And so it's got to be okay to talk about
The other thing is people of value people. There's a great
relationships.
concept. Yeah.
Man, really, we every business. All right. So my first rule is that you're in business to make money. Every business has to make money. The whole point of running a business, being an entrepreneur, starting a business is to make money, right? We
Hmm.
clarified that. The second thing is every business serves people. period. You were in a people business. So you're in a business to make money and you serve people. If you serve people really well, you take really good care of people, guess what happens? You can make a lot of money because it's really about relationships. It's really about how you take care of people, how you add value to them. You know, people get so caught up in price. I'm worried about this price. And I think price is that scarcity mindset, right? Price is just the minimum standard. What I want to help people focus is on value, right? So Scott, the question I ask is, would you give me $100 if I gave you 10,000?
Fair enough.
It's an
that's the kind of ATM
easy
I
question,
like.
right?
That's the ATM I like. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so if I'm offering a server that's providing $10,000 worth of value,
yeah,
it's no longer about the price. The price no longer matters, right? Because the price is a no-brainer. $100 for $10,000? Absolutely. I'd do it all day long.
Yeah.
Right. And the challenge is so many people get caught up in price, and then we get in these price wars, and then we do this. Mine's $100. My competitor, oh, he's at 90. Oh, I better go to 80. Oh, I better go to 70. Guess what happens?
Right. It's a race to the bottom, right?
A race to the bottom because they're focused on price instead of value. Keep your price, increase your value.
That's tweetable right there. That's tweetable right there. Can you repeat that again?
Keep your price, increase your value.
I love it. There was a blog post that came out probably close to 10 years ago by Jonathan Fields, who is a copywriter. He helps businesses write sales copy. And the title of his blog was, "How can you justify charging $1,000 an hour?" And the opening sentence to his blog post says, "Actually, I might not spend an hour with you." He said, "That's just what I block off on my calendar." He goes, "But if in the first 15 minutes, I give you an idea where you can go out and make that $100,000, why would you waste 45 minutes talking to me? Go implement it."
Absolutely.
I loved his mindset on that.
It's so fascinating, right? Because obviously we pay doctors very well. Right. And so we justify paying doctors thousands of dollars for an hour of their service, sometimes even less. And nobody feels bad about that. Right. Because why? How valuable is your life?
Right.
And so you're putting your life in the doctor's hands, not always at that emergency level, but the doctor that's taking care of your body is worth quite a bit of value, right? And so, yeah. And of course, the logical brain can justify it because the doctor's gone to, school for 32 years and he's practiced and he's done all these things. He's paid his dues, right? And so, man, $1,000 for him to walk into the emergency room and say, "Well, how you doing today?"
Yeah.
I'm okay. The nurses are taking pretty good care of me. And off he goes, and it's $1,000 bill. You're like, wow, okay. And I think, we'd lose track of value in a lot of places. And it's a simple equation. You determine value all the time. You think about value in your Netflix bill, right? Oh, $19. That's one movie at the theater. Huh. And I can eat popcorn and pause it and go to the bathroom without missing anything. All right. Yeah, Netflix that's a steal, right? And so you're thinking about value. You're not thinking about, oh wait, it's $19 every month.
There's a lot of these, a lot of these things. I'm just going to take a moment and just remind everybody, we are on Amazon Live with our guest, Robert Peterson, and he wrote the book, The Entrepreneur Mindset Shift. And we're just talking about some of the components of the book. And one of the things, Robert, that you talk about is really resonates with me because I've been involved in the startup world for a lot of years. Have been involved in startups, have assisted startups, have advised them. And there's this phrase that I hate, says fail fast. Because I am not, by the way, in favor of failing. But you've got a chapter in here. Let's talk about failing.
Yeah. So our culture has created this model where when we're very young, we start going to school, and school starts grading us from the age of 6 or 7. School starts sending us home with a note to our parents that says A, B, C, or D, or this magical F.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know pretty much from the age of 7 on that F is bad. And if
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking anything home with an F on it to my mom and dad, that's bad. So the school sets us up with this idea that failing is bad. And it's interesting because the scientific model wants to fail, right? The Einstein, we talk about Einstein and the light bulb, or Edison and the light bulb,
Mm-hmm.
sorry. And,
Yep.
and Edison tries and tries. He tries all these different things. And that's the scientific model, is this hypothesis. And,
Mm-hmm.
and then you write down your hypothesis, and then you do an experiment and you test it to see if it works. But you know what science teaches in school? We do these boxed experiments that are all designed to meet the hypothesis exactly as the class teaches it, all the
Mm-hmm.
way through physics, all the way through high school, all the way through, all the grade schools. And so science isn't teaching us the scientific method. They teach it, they talk about it, but all the experiments that they set up and designed for us to practice with are all experiments designed to prove the hypothesis, rather than creating an experiment that says, wait, this might not work. Oh, you have to try again. Oh, I have to try again. Oh, I have to
Mm-hmm.
try again.
Right.
And that's really what the entrepreneurial journey is,
Yeah.
right? I've got to try a sales script. I make 10 phone calls. I don't get a single response. Oh man, I better change my sales script.
Right.
I've got to try a blog post, and I'm putting out my blog post, once a week for a month, 2 months, 3 months. And wow, I'm not getting a lot of traffic. I need to change my blog post, right? My Facebook memes, but even Facebook lives or Amazon lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't start and we don't do it, you can't learn it. It's kind of like that grill you were talking about earlier. If I don't figure out how to put it together the first time, right, I'm going to throw it away and I'm not going to buy another one, and I
Mm-hmm.
quit.
Yeah.
And that really is failure, right? Whereas entrepreneurship is really about figuring it out, which is why they tell you to fail fast, fail often, because it's really about just get started.
Yeah.
Don't fail.
Well,
Just make some mistakes.
yeah.
It's okay
And I'm
to
going to
make some
stick with you.
mistakes.
I'm going to stick with you on the learning side, is because again, I'm not in this to fail. I'm not in business to fail, but learning is okay, and making decisions is okay. And to me, it's if you tried that sales script and you don't convert customers, I don't see that as a failure any more than Edison did when he tried using horsehair as the filament for his light bulb. Now it didn't work, but now he knows I want to use horsehair again.
Absolutely.
That's not gonna hold up.
And that's the cool thing about each one
Yeah.
of us has the right to define our terms. And for the
Yes.
majority of people, they're afraid to start because they're afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And I
But
think
if
I
you
agree
make
with
that
you. I think
yeah.
failure is learning. And
Mm-hmm.
so I want to learn, but you
Yeah.
have to be willing to start.
And
Because
make a decision as to when to stop something that isn't working.
that's when you're supposed to quit.
Yeah. And so really, to me, a lot of it comes around to decision making and how you go about making decisions. And how much information do you need? And everyone's different. Some people need lots of information. Some people are going to go off of gut or instinct.
The challenge, though,
Um,
is a story John Maxwell shares a lot,
yeah.
right? There's five frogs on a log, and 4 of them decide to jump. How many frogs are on the log? 5. Because just deciding doesn't mean you do it. And I think that's the big thing, is that the people that are trying to make the plan and trying to figure it out and you've just got to do it. You've just got to do something. Take that first step, because once you take that first step, man, you're going to learn all kinds of stuff. And the challenge, I think, for so many in our culture is they want to learn, they want to have a 100-point plan, right? They're writing down the business plan. They've got enough information that 3 banks would give them a loan, right? But they don't feel good enough about it yet. And they want to know steps, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 99, step 100. And they've got this great plan. And you know what happens when you take step 1? You know, it's the Mike Tyson, right? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And that's exactly what happens when you take step 1. You get punched in the face and you have to throw away all that work because now you're doing something different.
Yeah.
And so don't spend so much time worrying and thinking and overthinking and planning. Just do it. Just take a step and go for it. Because chances are it's going to be easier than you expected it to be. And you're going to be learning in the process. And that's the best part of the journey. Because that's really all we got is this journey.
That's it. You know, I've worked with a lot of entrepreneurs that, and one of the first red flags, the reason why I would not work with somebody is they're afraid someone's going to steal their idea.
Oh,
And those are the frogs that have decided to sit or decided to jump. But we said ideas without execution are worthless, and you can't be accused of stealing something that has no value.
And I'll take it to the spiritual level.
Yeah.
That if you believe in a creator and you believe in God and God's given you that idea and you're sitting on it, guess what he's going to do? He's going to pass it on to somebody else, and you're going to be watching QVC or Amazon Live, and guess what you're going to see? How many times have you heard somebody say that? That was my idea. And you know what the difference is? Execution.
Yeah.
That spirit, that vibrational frequency that idea was flowing on got caught by somebody else because you didn't hold on to it and take action with it. And I absolutely believe you have an obligation. If you've been given an idea, a business idea, a way to serve humanity, and you're not executing on it, you're failing yourself and you're failing your creator. You were created for something so great. And the fact that you were given it is amazing. Like that's like an honor. Like, whoa, I got this really cool idea. Woo, I'm going to change the world. It's scary as heck, but let's do it. Yeah, man. So many people hold on to them and are so afraid. And that little voice in their head just goes, take that idea and just squish it.
Absolutely. That was Red Skelton that said, if you have any talent, that's your gift from God. If you use that talent, that's your gift to God.
Amen.
And so take advantage of that. I want to talk about some more things here because we're just to remind people, Robert, we're talking to here on Amazon Live, the author of the Entrepreneur Mindset Shift. And entrepreneurship is not for everybody, but there are some concepts that are for everybody. And one of the concepts in your book is living in integrity.
It's interesting. I grew up a Boy Scout, know the Scout law, know the Scout oath, still know those values today, still live by those values. My father was the kind of man that arrived everywhere 15 minutes early because in his mind, getting a flat tire is not an excuse to be late. That's just a part of the journey.
Yeah.
And so the car breaking down and all those things were never an excuse to be late. So I'm always on time, right? That was one of my, I'm living in integrity. I said I'd show up. I'm going to show up. I'm going to be there on time. I'm going to keep my word, do all those things. And then I got into this entrepreneurial space and I'm doing networking. I'm doing all those things. I'm meeting everybody on time. And then I realized sometimes I'm not doing the things that I tell myself I'm going to do.
Interesting.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I'm out of integrity with myself. And so now when I say, oh, I'm going to start a podcast, and my brain giggles a little and it files away in that little giant growing file box it's got in the corner saying, yeah, right. So I've got a yeah, right folder up there. And like, wait a minute, my brain's got a yeah, right folder because it doesn't believe me anymore. I'm in trouble.
Ouch.
Yeah. And so my biggest integrity issue wasn't with how I was showing up in the world. It was how I was showing up with myself. And when I changed that, everything changed. So now when I say, all right, I'm going to start this diet or I'm going to start this exercise program, my brain's going, okay, what are we doing? Instead of filing it away and yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that vibrational frequency that changed and the attitude that changed, and now my brain is saying, okay, let's do it. And it's helping me in figuring out, coming up with more ideas, coming up with more ways to do things rather than saying, yeah, right, he's not going to do that.
Wow.
Let me show you what he will do. Right. And so that voice in my head is working for me instead of against me.
It was this Michael Jackson song, if you want to change the world, start with the man in the mirror.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful song. It's true. Yeah.
That's so one of those things. Yeah. The other thing, and we're just kind of rolling through some different segments of your book here. And one of the things, by the way, that I like about your book is that almost every chapter has action steps. Because you mentioned before about those frogs that decided to jump but hadn't jumped yet. Almost every chapter in your book has action steps. I want to talk about accountability and masterminds. Now, I've been part of some different masterminds. I'm a part of one. I'm coming. Actually, May is my 3-year anniversary with the Iron Sharpens Iron Mastermind, which I recommend. But it is a paid mastermind, and just to let people know that some of these things. I mean, I could lease a very nice car for what I pay for this mastermind. So I'm investing in my personal life, business life, spiritual life, relational life, business life, professional life by doing this. So you have a whole section on masterminds. Let's talk about that.
So we obviously mentioned the value of people, right? And Jim Rohn and Wayne Dyer both talked about, the 5 people that you hang around, right? You become like the 5 people. And the truth is, sometimes to get into a group that's where you want to be, that's doing what you want to do, it costs money to be a part of that group. And you use the best word, investment, because you see the value, right? An investment has value. A program has cost, right? And so when we shift again, worried about the price, worried about, no, you look at the value, and the value far outweighs the price. You'd pay any price once you're in there, because now you see the value of hanging around people that just think differently. They act differently. They're doing things differently. And the biggest step in entrepreneurship is you can't do things the old way. You can't do things the way you were doing them yesterday. You can't keep doing things the way you're doing them today. It's got to be different. If you want a different life, you got to do different things. And the best way to learn those different things is to hang around people that are doing different things. And then it feels natural. Then it feels right. And then, what's really magical is that our brains are interconnected. They are. And I know it's weird. I know it doesn't feel right to talk about it that way. But when you walk into a room like that, your brain is going, wow, and it's connecting with all these people in just incredible ways. And even if you don't hear a word anyone speaks, your brain is already changed because you were in that room. Yeah. And then when you communicate and you have conversations, and guess what happens in those rooms? You know what they talk about? They talk about money. They talk about where they're spending their money. They talk about where they're investing their money. They talk about what interest rates they're getting and getting. You know why? Because their money's making money. Not what interest rates they're spending, what interest rates they're getting. Because their money's working. Their money for them is like a river, man. The more they can pour into the river, the more they're letting it flow. And guess what happens when you feed the river? All the boats rise. And it's a really cool thing. Most people are putting up dams. And they're putting up dams trying to hold on to it, grab as much as it's like that air machine that's got all the dollar bills flowing all around, and you get 5 minutes to grab as many as you can. And I think that's how most people think life is, and they're trying to grab as many as they can. And guess what happens to money when you hold on to it, when you dam it up? It stops. Yeah. It stops. And then you're upside down because you're going to have to give more of it away than you get to keep. And the truth is, the more you let it go, this is really the love equation, right? If you love something, you let it go.
Right.
And if it comes back to you, it was yours, right? If it doesn't come back, it was never yours to begin with. But money
It
is
doesn't mean
one of,
hunt it down.
that's right. Doesn't mean hunt it down. No, money is one of those crazy things. We all need it. We all want it, but you
Yeah.
got to let it go. Give it away.
Yeah.
Did a little project, just 30 days. I spent 30 days and I gave away money every day, a little bit. Sometimes it was a lot, sometimes a little, everything from $1 to $100 bill. But I spent 30 days just giving it away. Didn't matter. I did no questions asked, no judgment, some of it anonymous, some of it on a street corner. But I made the commitment to myself to set my mind on the place that I'm just giving up. I'm going to give away money today.
Yeah.
And did that for 30 days. And it changes. It changes stuff. And of course I've always tithed and given to the church after 20 years of ministry. Tithing is very, very powerful. And so giving it away is so powerful, but you learn that in a mastermind and they're so powerful. And of course you can have paid masterminds. You can create a mastermind. Napoleon Hill's got his famous invisible mastermind when he has a boardroom meeting with 12 dead people or people that live in other parts of the world and won't come to his meeting. But guess what? He has conversations with them and he's using his imagination and his creativity. And the character of these people is speaking into his life and business. And it's changing his wiring in his mind to be more wise and make choices differently because of the conversations he's had with the people in his mind.
Yeah, there's a great book. I should have put it in the carousel, but people can find it here on Amazon, and it's Tribe of Millionaires. And there's a really good, an engaging story of what a mastermind is like. And now I will just say that Tribe of Millionaires, the title is really set to kind of, I don't know, it just attract people, right? Because everyone wants to be a millionaire, billionaire, whatever. And it's not necessarily about that kind of a game, but it really is about who do you surround yourself with. And as you said, Jim Rohn says we are the sum of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. And so you choose. This goes back to taking responsibility. You get to decide who you spend time with. And masterminds are a great way to be selective.
The challenge is so many of us, just because our family is the closest to us and our Uncle Joe ran a business. And so, man, we get this great business idea. We run to Uncle Joe, right? And what does Uncle Joe do? He's like, that'll never work. You could never do that. Instead, you go to a mastermind and you're paying these guys and you walk into the room and you say, hey, what do you think of this idea? And they're like, wow, okay, that could do. What if you do this? And then what if you do that? And they start asking questions, right? And then we get back to that curiosity because they're curious about the idea and it intrigues them to the point of asking other questions, right? And that's where the tribe becomes so powerful. That's where a mastermind can become so powerful because they're not disempowering, they're empowering. And they're going to ask you questions that you hadn't thought of, and they're going to help you think of the ways to make it work rather than come up with all the ways that, oh, that'll never work.
One of those things that people have to realize about masterminds too is it's not school. This is not a class. This is not a go through 9 weeks and achieve an outcome. I've been, like I said, 3 years in Iron Sharpens Iron, and every time we meet, every day, I am grateful for those influences in my life. But it's showing up. We meet every week. We text each other. We do video chats in between our weekly meetings because we have questions. I like, what about this? What about that?
It's family.
It's absolutely. It is.
Yeah, great mastermind.
And so that tribe. Family. Yeah. So as we start to wind down here, Robert, I want you to just talk a little bit about goals, and then you've got a challenge coming up, and I want people to know about that and how to get a hold of you, because the book is great. There's contact information there. I encourage people, get a copy of the book, Entrepreneur Mindset Shift, for yourself or for someone else that you know. Right here on Amazon, when you order the book, you can check the address and have it mailed directly to somebody that you know that would benefit from this. And I can't think of a better gift than Robert's book for somebody that really wants to make a difference. So, Robert, let's talk about goals, talk about the challenge, and how people get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things, our culture is really good at goal setting. We're
Mhm.
not so good at goal achieving. And so we get caught up in, right, New Year's resolutions. Everybody sets a goal. I'm gonna lose weight. I'm gonna jog more. I'm gonna take up kickboxing. And then of course we have no steps, no process. And really, I learned from Stephen Covey's son co-wrote a book with 4 other authors from the Covey Foundation called The 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Mm.
And really, goal setting needs to be goal achieving and focused on execution, focused on the process, focused on the journey. So I'm a huge fan of the journey. I love talking about the journey, changing our mindset from this idea of success being a destination, this place that I can fight and crawl and beat my way to get to, right? Corporate ladder, climb up and stomp everybody down and get to this place where success is. And it kind of feels like a beach in Mexico, but not the truth is all we've got's the journey.
Mm-hmm.
It's the stuff you're doing day to day to day to day. And if you don't like the journey that you're on, pull the cord on the bus and tell them to stop and let you off and get on the bus that you want to be on. That's the greatest thing about the entrepreneur journey is you get to choose. You get to choose what kind of company you want to have. You get to choose what kind of people you want to serve. You get to choose how you want to serve them. It's the most fantastic freedom in the history of the world is that choice to do those things. And in this country, nobody's going to steal your business. Nobody's going to take it away from you. You've got the right to build it as big as you want to. That's the American dream. And it's fantastic, but you've got to enjoy the journey. You've got to enjoy what you're doing day to day, the little processes to accomplish those goals. And that's really what goal setting really comes down to is figuring out what is the daily process, right? If I need 2 clients, then I need 10 meetings. If I need 10 meetings, then I need 200 phone calls. And yeah, 200 phone calls is blah, for a lot of people. But if I know I get 200 phone calls, I get 10 meetings, I get 2 clients, woo, right? And so now I know the math. And
yes.
And it really just becomes enjoying the journey and just creating the systems that help you become the goal achiever
Right.
that's going to help you build your life and business.
Mm-hmm.
And I can be reached at addvalue2life.com. That's everything on my podcast is hidden in there too. It's not really hidden, but and I have a challenge coming up. You can find information about the challenge at addvalue2life.com /EMS. It's just a quick 5-day challenge. You can find it on Facebook too. I'll be going live 5 days in a row and helping people through their own mindset shift.
Well, there you go. Robert, thank you so much. This has just been fabulous.
Scott, thank
always.
you for the opportunity. I appreciate you. Appreciate the conversation. And you shared some great stuff with me that I learned today. So I appreciate you.
It's a good day. I'm going to send you to the green room and we'll sign off here, but hold on, stand by. So this has been fabulous. Robert Peterson, let's throw his book up here. Look at that right there. The Entrepreneur Mindset Shift, Robert C. Peterson. It's in the carousel. Click on it, add it to cart. Trust me, you'll want this for yourself, for your business, for someone that you know that has a business, that is thinking about business, or is an advisor to somebody that's got a business. And I know a lot of you are out there. But thank you, everyone who has been watching. I appreciate it so much. And with that, we are going to sign off and say, have a fabulous day.